Joe Zarzaur here with Dr. Evan Malone. Today we're going to talk about bicycle accidents, specifically car versus bike accidents. And it's, of course, a nightmare for anybody that rides on the roads still, that you're involved in an accident involving a vehicle when you're on your bike. This firm is sort of especially situated to deal with these situations because Dr. Malone has finished over 20 full Ironman races and multiple, probably countless smaller races. I've finished 4 full Ironman races in my life and a fair amount of smaller triathlons and we've both done a bunch of road races. But we've also done a lot of training on our bikes on the roads because an Ironman is over a 100-mile bike ride that's included in the race. And so to compete in those events, you have to spend some time in the saddle. Both of us have done a lot of that training more recently inside because of the threat of drivers, but we felt that it might be important, especially given the history here at the firm of handling cycling accidents, to talk a little bit about what you should do if you're involved in a vehicle versus a bicycle accident and you're on the bicycle. It's somewhat similar to what you should do after a car wreck. Obviously, your health is number one priority, but after you've done the triage on your medical condition, and if you're not in some kind of extreme situation where you need to be rushed to the hospital immediately, then you should probably document the scene as best you can with a witness's phone, your phone, somebody's phone at the scene. Document where the car is positioned, where your bike is positioned, where the scene looks like, if there's any debris field from the impact, your injuries, how they look at the scene. All of that becomes relevant for both liability and injury damages portions of the case. You obviously want to take down the names of any witnesses that may have seen you riding just prior to and during the collision. Many times you get first names, you don't get last names. You get first names, you don't get phone numbers, you don't get tag numbers. Get something that identifies the witness, whether it's a tag number, a phone number, a first and last name. Put it in somebody's phone. Record it on your audio note, record it on a video that you take. Do something to record that information because we're going to need it later. A lot of people don't understand the relationship between car insurance and a bike collision. If a car is involved in the collision in any way, shape, or form, even though you're on the bike, your car insurance will be the primary payer of the medical bills for the first $10,000, just like in a car wreck. So it's important that you notify your insurance company, not give any statements about what happened, but notify them before you call us or right after calling us. And of course, just keep in mind that the car insurance will be the payer at the ER when you go. All right, Dr. Malone. I wanted Dr. Malone here because Dr. Malone, just based on the sheer number of races he's done, he's had more time in the saddle, more time on the streets. And I wanted Dr. Malone to sort of weigh in on what he thinks is the best way to avoid collisions to start with. And secondly, he's been also witness to more collisions to me on the roadway and what that feels like, what transpires, and what common mistakes cyclists make after being involved in a wreck.
Sure. So I guess to avoid the wreck, as Joe mentioned first, it's kind of like when you first learn to drive. Defensive driving is kind of what I was taught to drive when I was 16. I remember that was a big thing. So you're watching out for everybody as if they don't see you. And you have to think that way when you're riding. You may be concentrating, you may be in a group, you may be working hard and focused on your speed, whatever the case may be. You need to always be thinking, that car doesn't see me.
Or that car sees me and they don't care.
Yeah.
Which is equally possible and plausible in this area.
Yeah, so always think of that. So I guess choosing your route wisely, knowing your route well, allows you to do those thing so that maybe, riding defensively is second nature, where you can focus on your workout, your exercise, while at the same time being in tune with your environment. So that's number one. Number two is to have a safe bike. So brakes, everything's tuned up, there's no loose ends on the bike, got your helmet on, and then your lights. And around here, especially this time of the year, got to have the lights on the front and the back. That's something that I think is overlooked in my experience with cyclists. You spend thousands of dollars on a bike, spend a couple extra $100 on really good lights, okay? And again, that is part your responsibility according to Florida statutes, Florida law. So you can avoid a car wreck, as Joe had mentioned. Avoidance is number one. If you do have an accident, all the things Joe mentioned are great. In addition to that, I would say make and model the car. Because sometimes the tags may not be what you saw them to be. The speed of the car, maybe you normally wear reading glasses, but you're on your bike, you don't have them on. So make and model the car, color of the car, stuff like that. Anecdotally, at the scene, I've had fellow riders who have, I guess, taken the bait, so to speak, where a motorist will say, oh, well, I'll pay for your bike. And a common motorist thinks that's a $200 Huffy. And it's not, okay? And so they say, okay, great, yeah, they're gonna pay for my bike and we're all good, I got their phone number. And you go to the bike shop to get your bike fixed or replaced or whatever, and it's thousands of dollars. So then you call that person back and all of a sudden they ghost on you. Whoa, I didn't think it was gonna be $4,000 worth of wheels. So I would not agree to anything like that at the scene. I would let them know, say, hey, this is my bike, and I've got a lot invested in this, and leave it at that. Don't try to scare them off with, oh, it's a $10,000 bike, it's going to be that. So I would definitely not take the bait on, oh yeah, they're going to give me $200 check.
Which means you need to call the police, because like in the car wreck videos, you never agree to not have a police officer come to the scene and do a report. And that's especially true when you have a bike accident, because you're going to be more apt to be pushed to do that, because it's going to look like there's not a lot of property damage to your vehicle, right? There won't be a lot of property damage to their vehicle because it's a bike, right? So there's going to be a huge pressure by the other driver to not have the cops come. You have to push back on that. And you have to make sure the cops do come to the scene, because you want a full report done. And you want all of the information about the witnesses and the name and address of the driver and the owner, all that information we put in the report. And if there's an injury to any degree, there's a huge likelihood that you're going to be involved in a case. And you're going to have that information. And like Evan just said, if you're riding around on a $10,000 bike, I can promise you, nobody, the average driver, is not thinking they just did $10,000 worth of damage. They're thinking they did $200, like you said. And they have no concept of what they just did. So, and they're thinking they're just going to write you a check out of their checking account, when in actuality, they're going to have to do a claim with their insurance company. Yeah. So all that are good points. The other thing I'd point out, Evan, before you close this out, is you can, like you said, avoidance is the key here. You have to pick a road and a time that lessens the likelihood that you're going to encounter some kind of aggressive driver, a drunk driver, those kind of things. Like, rule that stuff out. Mm-hmm. Like, so I know there are stories and real life stories of people getting hit on the road early in the morning from drunk drivers that were still drunk, right? Mm-hmm. It's 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. Okay. But that is sort of the exception.
Well, and early in the morning, so sunrise is, depending which direction you're riding and the motorists are heading. Mm-hmm. If you're like, oh, the sun's up, I'm going to go for a ride. If you're riding and the sun's on the horizon and they can't see you because the sun is blinding them, that is not a wise place for you to be riding at that time, or that direction even. So that's an example where everybody's of sound mind and you can still have a car, that's right. A car versus bike accident.
But you want to minimize the things you can't control. You can't control who's going to drink and drive. You can't control whether somebody's going to be aggressive. You can't control whether the sun's going to be in there. Well, you can't control whether you're on the road, but you can't control the sun. But you can control when you ride, right? And which direction you ride, which road you're on, where the sun is going to be positioned at the time. You have to think about all those things, because you are the one on the piece of carbon fiber that has zero protection. Yep. They're the ones that are not, it's not going to leave a mark on their car and you could possibly be killed. Right? And you won't be able to look at their car and tell that anything happened. Yep. So that's what you got to remember, right? And then most people think they own the road from pavement to pavement because they're in a car. And they just don't understand the bike laws, right? In Florida. So these things even happen in races that are well organized, and there's cops at the intersections. Yep. There's drivers that still go around the police and end up hitting a driver, or go around a barricade and end up hitting a cyclist.
They don't belong on the road.
Correct.
They're not paying taxes, things like that. And you have a car at home and you're just riding your bike at the time.
They didn't build the road for cyclists. That's what they think. It's like, this is for a car, get off my road. So that is the way I think a huge minority or even a majority of people in this area think. Anything else we can say?
So we're going to share the statutes that are regard to cyclists, okay? So that's something you should be aware of, just your responsibilities and rights. Lastly, injuries. We always talk about injuries. So document everything, as Joe had mentioned. If you have enough of an injury where your helmet has been damaged, you potentially have a bad injury inside. So that's something you're going to brag about. You know, I had this bad injury, my helmet smashed to pieces. Well, guess what? You may have something more going on with your brain. So I would not ignore that and get done bragging with your buddies and then get checked out. Number two, soft tissue injuries, road rash, things like that. That's going to be the most common. Document that with how your clothes look. You know, did you tear through the seat of your pants, through the top of your shirt when you hit the ground? That's where the injuries are also going to likely be. So when the road rash stops hurting and you realize, man, I still can't breathe because maybe I got a pneumothorax or some fractured ribs, that's a real injury you cannot ignore. Okay, so document everything, photos not only of the scene but of everything you had on your person at the time. You can do that when you get home even.
Right. If this happens during a race, an organized race, it's obviously important for us to get involved quick enough to look at the race agreement that you signed. Many times you signed a release. We need to know if there's a third party involved, if there's any culpability or liability on the race director or the race officials for the course. Those are things we'd have to look at well in advance. Hopefully you can get in touch with us sooner rather than later on that. If you have questions about any injuries that occur from a motor vehicle versus a bike accident, you're happy to reach out to us. If you're injured in the context of any kind of race, I think it's important to have a lawyer that knows, and a physician that works at a law firm, that knows how races work. Evan is a race director. So in addition to having completed 20 plus Ironman races. So we have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to races, injury, because this is what we do, and specifically cycling injuries. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach us on the web at zarzaurlaw.com, or you can always call us at 855-HIRE-JOE. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Malone.
Yep.